I'm Yuri Go, and today we're going to be talking about the greatest thing a composer can ever have, the glorious template. See, I have a composer friend, not saying any names, who to date still makes a new template every 2 weeks and then refuses to use a template at all. I guess he just really loves to waste time on all fronts. But if you don't like to waste time, I highly suggest you use a template, and this video is going to show you why. So I'm just going to walk you through my template as we're going to explain why it's structured the way it is, how it works, and like the areas where it saves a lot of time every time you try to compose. Okay, so first things first, how do you make a template? I'm sure that question is going to come up. It obviously depends on your DAW, but it's got to be something similar to Cubase, which is do what you want to do here, make this look as nice as it does, and then go File, save as template, write in your name, and here you can choose a category. It's probably best you do choose a category because otherwise when you're loading up a new folder, it's not going to enter in the scoring and it's going to be moved over to the more. Okay, so first things first, the instruments. And yes, thanks for noticing. I did color my instruments correctly. Woodwinds are in fact blue, strings are yellow, and brass are red. It follows mostly the score order of instruments, so woodwinds, brass, percussion, strings. However, because strings are super important, I didn't want them hidden underneath the percussion. I wanted them in the middle of the other main orchestral melodic instruments. It doesn't seem too far away now, but when we start opening up and going into all these things, it can be a few scrolls to get down from one side to another. By that logic too, I also didn't want them at the very, very top, because if I'm copying parts from the strings to another instrument, I don't want to have to move it from the strings all the way down to the brass. Again, it's only a few movements here, but it grows pretty big. So because of that, it made the most sense to just put it in the middle, and I can just copy up or down when I need to. So then we have the percussion section. We'll go over everything in detail later. Miscellaneous, this is orchestral miscellaneous instruments, things like pianos and choirs. Oriental miscellaneous, these are non-orchestral instruments, synths, jazz, and audio tracks. So let's break it down. Woodwinds, we've got my two main libraries, all ordered in score order to make things easy to find. Berlinwinds are disabled to save load-in time and RAM and whatever, but if I ever need anything, it's just a quick 2 clicks to enable it. Disabling and enabling is super common in my template. This is because my template only has instruments that I actually use. I still occasionally, of course, use other instruments that aren't part of the template should the score need them. But most of the time, everything that I need has been concised into this single template. I mean, that's the point of a template, right? However, I have 4 main string libraries that cover pretty much everything I would ever need to make. But I don't need to use them all every time. Tokyo Scoring Strings is a perfect example of this. I probably use this amazing library like once every 5 tracks. And so it doesn't really make sense to be enabled and waste an extra 5-10 seconds in load-in time, waste some RAM, if I'm only going to use it 1 out of 5 times. However, something like symphonic strings, I use in probably 3 out of 5 tracks. I sometimes use multiple different libraries per track, so the math adds up, I swear. So it makes more sense for this one to just be ready to go. So why not delete all the disabled tracks and just load them in when you need to use them? Well, 2 reasons. One, it's a lot faster to just enable a track than it is to actually load one in. And 2, buses and routing. But we'll get into that. So after these, I have solo winds, solo instruments, and then grouped. I prefer to write with individual instruments instead of grouped patches, like ensemble patches. I think it sounds better. You can actually blend tone colors. It's a lot more helpful in the mixing stage. It saves a lot of time in orchestration if you ever go to actually recording with people. But sometimes group patches cut out the obvious middleman. For example, this low winds grouped is 2 grouped ensembled low winds patches on both of the different Albions. This is for Brahms or long held notes that I want to be really thick. It's a lot more realistic that all the winds are recorded at the same time with the same mics than individually, and I've patched them all together, layering them after the fact. Or something like British Drama Toolkit, which is very simple to do with actual players, but is extremely difficult and a huge time waster to do using VSTs. to just get something that's even slightly on par with the results. So you may as well just use these. Otherwise, though, yeah, I don't use like full ensemble to write my parts. So yeah, groups sometimes. Extended winds are orchestral winds, but the weird versions. And then ethnic winds are non-orchestral winds instruments. So strings, the biggest, I think, out of all of them. So we've got our 4 main libraries, then the groups, then solo, and then effects. So in the main 4 libraries, we have a various selection of longs and shorts. It just depends on how I want to use them, how I want to bus them and route them, and then how often they actually come up. For example, LA scoring strings is super, super dry, and so I want to treat the reverb and the EQing even on the shorts a little differently to how I want to treat the longs. But something like symphonic scoring strings or Tokyo scoring strings have so much natural color to them that over-treating them with different reverbs and stuff, the different articulations, kind of kills the personality of the library. To an extent, take everything with a grain of salt, of course. Grouped longs, same thing as the woodwinds. It's for those moments that you really can't get, or it's done quicker or easier with the grouped patches. Something like half the ensemble playing gives this really delicate texture that you genuinely cannot get if you have the full ensemble playing. So again, I actually could do this with the studio strings or the LA scoring strings because you can pick how many players you want, but it's just more work for the same result. It doesn't cut out any of that time for orchestration. I already know what's going on, and it just makes things a lot quicker. So this is the same as the octaved lows. There's something really nice about 2 players playing together and feeding off each other than there is with 2 individual players and trying to layer it. And then these 2, again, could be done, but would take a lot of time. Cuts out the middleman. Group shorts. These are for that giant Hollywood sound. These are just a lot of things layered. I don't want anything realistic when I use these. These, again, you can't do unless you record them that way, and then saves a lot of time. Solo strings, pretty obvious. And then effects are just these weird things. This folder used to be a lot bigger, but I actually cut it down because I didn't actually use those other things. But these are just, weird ways to play that I wouldn't really fit anywhere else. Brass is a lot more concise. It's just the instruments, groups, and then solo, and that's it. So the percussion. Drums are, drums. Percussive effects are, again, those kind of effects things. Pitch percussion is, do I have to go over this? Pitch percussion? And then orchestral percussion is what you would imagine a percussionist in a symphonic orchestra would do. If you're like, what is your job? He's like, oh man, I got 50 of them. It's triangle, sometimes snare, sometimes on a kit, other times doing this thing. Timpani, I guess, would be here, but because it has pitch to it, I want to bus it a different way, and it just makes more sense for me to find it in here. Just how my brain works. You don't have to do it that way. And cymbals are obviously just cymbals, but again, it makes most sense to me to keep them in their own little section so that I can find them all and whatever. Miscellaneous is broken up into 3 categories: pianos, choirs, and keyboards. Pianos are just pianos. Choirs are, choirs. All the stuff you would need for that. We got not just the men choirs, but the women choirs and the children choirs too. And other stuff. And then keyboards is keyboard instruments. Things like organ, harp, harpsichord. There is some other things in here like the lyre, the music box, and the kalimba that I guess would probably make more sense to be in the Oriental miscellaneous, but it doesn't really matter how you organize it as long as it makes sense to you, and this makes sense to me. Oriental miscellaneous speaks for itself. Synths is both synths like Serum and some basic synths for filling out sounds as opposed to actually getting color and stuff. As well as risers, things like thrill, these reversals, rise and hit, various stuff like that. Jazz is for sample libraries that are recorded in a jazzy way, not an orchestral way. I don't have many of these, but I do use them a bit more than I thought I would, and it's nice to have this little section here instead of trying to make it with these ones. Audio is just 6 audio tracks. 3 are on the left in, the input 1, and 3 are on the input 2. This can be used for recording guitars, recording vocals, recording something, whatever, or it can be used to drag and drop samples. I really very rarely use this, but again, when I do need to drag or drop or record or something, it's a lot nicer just enabling and dragging instead of having to set up buses, having to, doing all this extra work. So to finish with the main window, we've got this cool section up here. I don't know if you can do this on other DAWs, but you can definitely do this on GigaChad Cubase. So it's got a timer here, which I keep just barely visible, so that you can see not only the bars that we're at, but also the seconds, which can help. I've got a tempo track. Again, if I want to slow down or speed up, it helps. Otherwise, you can just move things around here. Marker track for when I'm working with film, and a chord track. I don't really use this chord track to record chords to keep track of what's going on there. It's normally because if I want the key to be in a flat key, like B flat major or whatever, then I can set up flat here and the whole MIDI will be now, instead of being sharps, will be flats. Or I can change it around or whatever. So it's a nice way to help read that MIDI track so it's less confusing, I guess. So now the mixer. So if we look up here, every single track is going to a bus. Every single one. So it's pretty much every single track also has their own verb set up. Except for a few of them, like some of these, because I've got so much natural reverb, it kind of just makes it muddy. And some of the synths, which aren't showing up because they're disabled, and so they don't show up until they're enabled, but they also don't have one because it didn't make sense and I didn't want it. But everything that I do want to have a verb is all feeding to a verb with the appropriate levels. So each of the reverb tracks, in case you're interested, they all have different reverbs. Ones that I find work, even the ones that are the same have still got different, halls and stuff set up to make it really fit for what we're doing. All the reverb tracks feed from the reverb bus into the main bus, which obviously all goes to stereo out. So this way, if I want to turn down one thing, like the pitch percussion, I just have to click here and turn it down. I don't have to worry about also turning down the verb or anything like that. Just saves a little bit of work in the later. I know not everyone likes to do that for some reason, but it seems to cut out so much work for me. Some of the time savers in here. I mean, already, that's the core part of how much time it saves. This took like hours to make, literally multiple hours. I can't imagine having to do, obviously not going to use every single track, but every single time I load a new thing, having to make a new instrument, it would save probably like an hour, honestly, each track at very least. But we've got more. So one thing is all of them have this just little EQ high pass to try and cut out the muddiness. We've got this -2 bars, which is a bit annoying to set up. You just have to go into Project if you're interested in that, and then Project Setup and figure out this here. But it's something that's annoying that I want to do every time, but it's a nice little thing for getting like MIDI CC data before you start at bar 1. It helps if you've got like transients on actual audio that you want them to hit dead on, but you don't want it to like clip in or anything. As well as even if you want to do like a cymbal roll or a timpani roll or something into the main piece. So having this little area here is nice that things can still start at 1. Because otherwise, when you count it, you go, okay, we're doing things in 4-bar phrases, so at bar 9 is when I'm going to do something. But that doesn't happen if you start here and then bar 3, now you've got to be at 11, and it just gets more and more confusing. This just helps a little bit. It's just a nice thing to have too. So some tracks, like the Gemco and the Saga, sound really bad alone. I'm going to show you. Okay, so I haven't done this well. I haven't put any effort into it, but I just want to show you that these are libraries that honestly sound really, really bad. If we play them now, you can hear them. Which doesn't sound too great, but if we add the EQ that I've had and put on there already, now it sounds how I want it anyway, and it means that when I do want to use a library like this, I don't have to add that in and then also add on the EQ. Same thing here. Just a little bit here, but it adds a lot. Other little EQ things is the last cello has this ugly little frequency here that maybe I can show you. Annoying things that I've already cut out, and now every time I want to use it, I can just use it and it sounds good. Every track, except for the one that I just bumped then, is at -5, and this works twofold. I have a lot of wiggle room to boost them, of course, and to stop, you know, the clipping when everything's too loud. And now, the final thing is if I ever do want to add a new instrument, so I go here, I go instrument track, I pick whatever instrument I want, probably a Kontakt thing, and I've got here. I just go, oh, it's going to go to the brass, or percussion brass, whatever. Go into here, and then if I do want to also, I go to there, sends, click, the brass verb, and that's how much we want, or whatever. So it makes it so quick to load in. I don't have to do anything extra, that it's so nice that even if I do want to add stuff, I just do it, instead of dreading the, all the annoyingness that it's going to put me out. Alright, there you go. Be amazed. Hope you learned something. My thingy cut out my camera, I just realized. So yeah, anyway, bye.